What's going on, everybody? Doug here, one of the hosts, producers, and creators of the Genre of Your Life podcast, here with a review roundup episode for you all this week. No full episode of the podcast this week, unfortunately. Nick's moving places, Joel's working, and life and work get in the way. But have no fear, the boys and I will be back next week with a full episode of the podcast for you all. And next week's episode, boy oh boy, we have an action-packed, fun episode for you all. Next week, we have our review of The Fall Guy, a movie that, if you listen to the show the past couple of months, I am over the moon ecstatic for this show, for this movie, that is. Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, David Leitch, cannot come soon enough. I am so hyped to review this movie with you all, with Nick next week, and we'll have our summer movie preview of 2024 for you all. And of course, our coverage on the new Wolverine Deadpool trailer. Listen, we all love Wolverine. We love Deadpool. We have a lot to unpack for you all regarding that trailer. Sorry it's so late, but again, next week we have an action jam-packed episode for you all. But in the meantime, we have my review roundup episode this week. I'll be covering the new highly anticipated Zendaya-led film Challengers, as well as the Amazon Prime hit series Fallout, based on the very popular video game series. As always, guys, you can find the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and YouTube Music. You also find a full audio show on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Midway Avenue Productions. Whether you're on Apple or Spotify, YouTube, or Amazon, subscribe, leave a review, leave a rating, good or bad. We want to hear from you all. Your feedback means the world to us. And we're still doing our giveaway for the time being, but unfortunately, the giveaways this summer might be a little slim to none because, unfortunately, sometimes the companies that don't like us doing giveaways or contests. So we'll finish ours, the one we have going on right now, but in the summer, we'll see. And we got some, unfortunately, bad news about our giveaway and contest. But hey, have no fear. We will finish our movie mystery mini pack of 5 mini movie posters this summer, as well as our Amazon gift card. So if you still want to enter, again, it's still open. Review, rate the show. Share the word with you all. Share the word with us, with your friends, family, fellow podcasters, fellow movie fans. And we really appreciate the feedback and support. It truly means the world to us. So we do appreciate your support. And like I said, we have a jam-packed summer of movies, shows, streaming, entertainment news. We are just scratching the surface. So please follow, subscribe, rate, review the show. And as always, thank you so much for showing us all the love and all the support. Alrighty, guys. Like I mentioned, this week's review roundup episode, we have the new, highly anticipated Zendaya film Challengers, directed by Luca Guadagnino, the director of Call Me by Your Name, Bones and All, and the Suspiria remake back in 2018, I believe. So let's get back on what we're talking about this week with the review. So again, we have Challengers. Challengers is a movie that, again, I've been kind of excited for, actually, because the trailers came out like a year and a half ago, but the movie was pushed back a lot because of the actors and writer strike. Basically, Challengers follows Tashi, a former tennis prodigy turned coach, is married to a champion on a losing streak. Her strategy for her husband's redemption takes a surprising turn when he must face off against his former best friend and Tashi's former boyfriend. Bit of a love triangle here. And again, Zendaya, she's being a lot of hype, a lot of praise for the movie. She produced this movie as well. And again, I think the movie was supposed to come out, I believe it was like September or August of last year. I could be wrong. And there was a lot of hype around the trailer, a lot of buzz around the trailer, the marketing, stuff like that. And of course, it was pushed back because of the strikes. So let's get into it, shall we? So this by far, and I mean by far, is one of the best original sports movies that we've had in quite some time. When I saw the Iron Claw back in December of 2023 before the new year, I was watching this. I'm like, wow, this is really one of the best sports movies that we've gotten in a very, very, very long time. If you haven't, look for our review of the Iron Claw back in it was early January. That movie just blew me away from the cinematography, the acting, the score, the directing. It just really struck a chord in me that I was not expecting. This movie I had high hopes for because of the people involved. Zendaya obviously being the star, being the lead, being producing it. There's a lot of hype around this movie, and I was excited for it for sure. I'm telling you guys, this movie for sure is one of the best original sports movies that we've gotten in quite some time, because the Iron Claw, unfortunately, not original. It's based on a really awful tragedy of the family that's based on the Iron Claw. But this is the original script, original story, and again, the trailers that came out back, I won't say a year ago, like before summer, or at least summer of 2023, there was a lot of buzz of like, what is Zendaya doing next? What is her next project? With Euphoria and Dune and Spider-Man, Zendaya really is on the map now, one of the actresses to look out for. And this writing, Justin Kruzekis, I'm probably butchering his name. This is an original screenplay. Yeah, I said Luca Guadagnino, who directed stuff like Bones and All, Call Me by Your Name, Suspiria. I'll be honest, his movies have not really stuck with me or made an impression on me personally. I remember seeing Call Me by Your Name in college when it was like all this big hype around it. And unfortunately, the movie had kind of a bit of a damper now because of the whole Army Hammer situation. And if you've been following the show for a couple of months now, or the whole time, I'm not the biggest Timothée Chalamet fan. He's not impressed me at all, either in Dune, Interstellar, Call Me by Your Name. List goes on, Lady Bird. List goes on and on. I've not been sold on him as an actor, unfortunately. So the movie to me did not work. It felt kind of stale. The chemistry didn't really work for me for the most part. But again, a lot of praise, a lot of Oscar buzz. I think got both Armie Hammer and Chalamet both Oscar nominations. But to me, it just didn't work for me for some reason. I was looking forward to seeing, because all the buzz I was hearing from fellow professors, film students, other critics, didn't work for me. Suspiria, I remember watching in college. I kind of fell asleep halfway through, and I went back and finished it. Wasn't for me. Bones and All, I started watching it. I'm not a big fan of watching movies about cannibalism or people eating each other. So to me, I was kind of like, I'm kind of checked out. It didn't work for me. So when I heard Luca Guadagnino was directing this movie, I was like, a little hesitant, because again, his filmography has not worked for me. I don't think I'm not a huge fan of him as a director or a filmmaker. This movie has definitely, out of all his filmography, all his movies, this by far is probably my favorite movie of his. Again, not saying much because of my track record with him as a filmmaker, director, but this movie to me is probably his best, in my honest opinion. Right off the bat, Zendaya, oh my goodness, she is out of this world fantastic. This is her best career-defining performance, if you ask me. Listen, she is great. Euphoria as Rue, that is her show. The music, the acting, just the uncomfortable, uncanny nature of the show itself. Listen, she steals the show in that movie. Steals the show in that series. Euphoria, both season 1, season 2, even the specials. She is phenomenal in that. But in this movie, the way she kind of commands the screen and the presence, it is very very iconic. It's very legendary. It's very Hollywood movie star-esque. And every scene she's in, she's remarkable in this. Whether it's scenes with her and Mike Feist, her scenes with Josh O'Connor, you're you're enamored by her charm and just her swagger, her charisma, and she really carries this movie through and through. And Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor have a lot to play in this movie, but without a doubt, this is Zendaya's movie, no matter what. To me, when she was casted in Spider-Man, I'm like, okay, interesting, but she really didn't pop for me as MJ in the Spider-Man movies until No Way Home, where I was like, okay, why is she in these movies? What is her presence in these movies? And No Way Home, I think she really popped. But I think in Homecoming, as well as Far From Home, I was like, this kind of I'm too cool for school. I don't care what you think on an act. Didn't work for me. I was like, you're telling me that our Peter Parker has to be in love with her? Make it believable. I just didn't believe it. But in No Way Home, she had a huge range with her, Ned, and obviously Peter, and her chemistry between Jacob Batalon and Tom Holland, her real life boyfriend, really shows wonders in No Way Home. And I was like, okay, now I understand. And I remember watching Euphoria for the first time right after seeing that movie, because Euphoria season 2 was coming out, and I was like, now I get it, because I think she has a lot to offer in Euphoria, and she has a lot to offer in No Way Home. But to me, this movie, she really, again, commands the scene. She had her presence. She's really on a new level of acting right here. There's scenes where she has these really long monologues, just her, how she's feeling, her stance on certain things, and she's commanding the scene. Her dialect, the way she talks to these certain characters, you can't keep your eyes off her, and it's a whole new level of acting from her that I have not seen before. Personally, I think in the first Dune, she was underutilized a little bit, because that's how the story used her. I think she's a lot more to do in Dune Part 2, and she has a great arc in Dune Part 2, don't get me wrong. But in this movie, She's showing us something new that she has never shown before in her acting, her career, and she just knocks it out of the park. She's phenomenal in this. Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor. So Mike Feist, obviously, he was in the remake, the Steven Spielberg remake of West Side Story, the movie that I thought was really damn good. But obviously, when it came out, no one saw it. I think, to be fair, too, it came out at the wrong time because it came out around No Way Home. COVID was going away. People were getting vaccinated, but still, the audience of that, the audience and demographic of that movie did not really kind of respond well to it because, again, people were still waiting for it on, streaming or DVD, home video, and the movie did not do well at all. It was a major flop, and for a Spielberg movie, it really did not do the numbers that they wanted to. But I thought, okay, cool. I grew up watching the original West Side Story, in middle school, high school with my mom, and I thought what he did, and I thought he was a very great approach in the remake because, again, you're remaking a movie of a very beloved story. It's based off of Romeo and Juliet, obviously. So there's a lot to offer, lots going on in that movie. I do think it's one of Spielberg's best movies of recent memory. And I thought how he played Riff in that was very interesting. I thought he played really great with Ansel Elgort and the rest of the Jets and the rest of the Sharks. And in this, I really do like his performance in this because, again, the way he interacts with Zendaya, the way it interacts with Josh O'Connor, because, again, it's this very weird, thrilling love triangle that kind of goes both ways. And I was very, very intrigued by his performance. I was very captured by his performance. And I think it's gonna be in the movie that I can't wait to watch this summer, which is the Bike Riders with Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, Jodie Comer, Michael Shannon, Boyd Holbrook, Norman Reedus. A great cast. So I am very looking forward to that. But I think his performance as this in Challengers as Art Donaldson is something to watch, something to look forward to, something to just kind of remember, because I think he's a lot more. I think this is how he gets started for his career. Listen, it said Riff in West Side Story was great, but there's something the way he looks as Zendaya, the way he moves his body as a tennis player, the way he kind of interacts with the smaller characters. Just watch him. It's a movie star in the making kind of performance, and I think he has a lot to offer in the time being, but also down the road. So look out for his performance in this. But I think when he has a lot more offer to the Bike Riders and his upcoming performances and roles, he has definitely movie star potential. Going to Josh O'Connor. Josh O'Connor, to me, I'm not familiar with his work before seeing this. I'll tell you what, though. I could tell he was from British because the way he kind of moves his lips, and I was like, I think he's from the UK or British or from somewhere in the UK or Britain. And I remember, I think he was in a movie called Emma, and I really do think he was in a show called The Crown. So I remember seeing him in clips on social media, or it was consideration stuff for Oscars and award season, but I was not familiar with his work whatsoever. I think he has a lot to offer in this, but I think Mike Feist has the better role in this. However, I think when Josh O'Connor's on screen with Zendaya or with Mike, they all have believable chemistry. The chemistry between all three of them is electric. Zendaya has good chemistry with both guys, both Josh, both Mike. And when you're watching them, you believe that they're all kind of just enamored by each other. They all have a romance between each other. And when they were all on screen together, you can't help but watch. But really, I believe that Mike and Josh were best friends. You believe the characters, you believe how they were best friends and growing up with as tennis players, as adults, and now even further adults when they're in their prime of their tennis careers. So I do think that Josh has a lot to offer to the film as an actor. I just felt more interested in Mike's story as well as Mike's kind of just performance. But when Josh pops, he pops. There's certain scenes when he's talking to Zendaya without Mike where you're just okay, how's this going to happen? Where's this going to go? Where are we going? Where are we working towards this? And when it happens, boy, oh boy, it happens. And again, for a movie about tennis and sports, who knew that tennis could be so toxic? Because again, all three of them explore the toxicity as well as the triumphs and downfalls of tennis. And I think you should watch the movie because of that reason too. Because again, it shows a great job of how you could be top of your game at one point, and the next time you could be at the bottom of the barrel, down bad for cash, desperate for anything. and it shows really kind of the highs and lows of both of this sport. I thought the filmmaking, the directing, and the writing of this show was really the kind of the rise and fall of tennis, but sports in general. So watch out for that. The score in this, well, first off, when I was watching this, it felt like I was watching a David Fincher directed movie. Like, if David Fincher directed like a sports movie, this would be it. It has themes of like Gone Girl, Social Network, The Killer, Gone Baby. No, that's the wrong movie. Zodiac. Like, the nature of the movie itself, it felt very David Fincher. I was like, man, the whole time I'm like, are you sure that Fincher didn't direct this movie? Because it felt like a lot of David Fincher movie through and through. And I get a lot of problems with Luca Guadagnino, because again, I'm not a fan of his filmmaking, not his story. And I think it's a really kind of homage to the film of David Fincher and his kind of style, because it's very dark, it's gritty, and has a very kind of odd comedy that you can't help but laugh. Kind of uncomfortable comedy that I think was in Social Network, The Killer, and a lot of Fincher movies. But to me, what really blew me away was the score in this. Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, who are from Nine Inch Nails, their score in this is out of this world, superb, electric, upbeat. It reminded me a lot of the films they did with Fincher, Gone Girl, Social Network, Zodiac, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Killer. Like, this, really, the score in this, I was just so like enamored and enthralled by, like, wow, this score is crazy good. So I remember when I saw The Killer back in December of the past year, I was like, Fincher's back in his element, using Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, going back to kind of The Killer, kind of like murder, kind of just like deep kind of crime vibe of it. And this movie is not that way whatsoever, but the way it's shot, the way it's filmed, the way the score is used, it really does feel like a David Fincher film. So I gotta give a lot of credit to Luca Guadagnino for that, because again, there's aspects of this where I'm like, man, this feels like a David Fincher movie, and that really works for me, because Fincher's one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. And, you know, stuff like Social Network and The Killer and Zodiac to work for me very, very well. And the way the dark undertone of this tennis world works, it was very Fincher inspired. But again, listen to the score. The way the score was utilized during certain scenes with Zendaya, Josh, or Mike, man, it is something to just like remember for the rest of this year. I was playing the score this morning. I was writing my review, doing my reaction for the movie, where I was like, man, this score is something special. And I was playing back on Spotify. I'm like, it's gonna be my playlist for scores to look out for, remember. So I hope next year when the Oscars happen that the score is considered, because this score really is one of the best scores I've heard in a long time. It's up to how much I enjoyed their score with Social Network. So listen to the score, listen to the music, pay attention to the music in the movie, because again, it's a character itself, and it adds a lot to the movie, the story, the themes, the overall arcs of these characters. And speaking of overall story, I was kind of surprised how funny this movie was. You know, in my out-of-theater reaction and review for Abigail and Mike's characters, between Zendaya and Josh and Mike, where I was like, wow, they did a good job of not marketing the comedy in this, or not showing the comedy in this in the marketing, because again, it wasn't relying on jokes or yucks or comedy in general. The movies was kind of like, this is kind of dark, it's kind of deceiving, it's kind of thrilling, this is kind of like sports, like what happens if you kind of top of your game, but then you kind of just lose everything. And so I do appreciate that the marketing of this movie did not show any of the comedy or funny aspects, quote unquote, of the story. And again, the first hour, the jokes in the movie, our audience that we were in were laughing hysterically. They were laughing, they were crying, they were having a great time with it. I was like, wow, they're responding very well to the humor. And the same thing, I felt with Abigail, the jokes really worked for the most part. There was times, I would say, the jokes were not landing for me personally, but for the audience for the most part, were really responding well to the jokes and the humor. And a lot of it came from kind of just like the uncomfortableness of it all, but also to how like just the kind of like the natural interaction between Josh, Mike, and Zendaya, where I was watching, I was like, you know what? This movie's making me laugh. I'm enjoying the jokes. They're working for me. I get a lot of props to the writing and the directing that, hey, the jokes are very working well with the story itself, the drama, and the thriller aspect of the movie itself. So again, there will be a lot of jokes when you see the movie. You're like, wow, this is kind of funny. I didn't expect this movie to be funny. And I felt the same way when I saw Abigail. I was like, wow, the jokes definitely worked. So I think a lot of props to the humor in this, because again, when it really worked, it worked. But again, there were times where the jokes were just not landing for me, but they were landing for the overall audience. And hey, what? more props to the story, more props to the jokes that were landing for the majority of the audience. This, again, I said, I had to get a lot of props, and you probably heard me 100 times this year about, Amazon and MGM and other studios, Universal, Lionsgate, everything. I really have to emphasize a lot of that. Hey, listen, this is another movie by Amazon MGM, that this is an original movie that they're putting out in theaters. This movie probably have a short theatrical window because of Amazon Prime and Prime Video, whatever. And as we've seen the past couple months, a lot of these movies are having short theatrical windows because they'll go on streaming platforms or VOD, on demand, whatever. I have to give a lot of props to Amazon MGM because, again, they are investing this movie to be full theatrical release. Why that is, and I do think that Amazon and Universal have shown a lot this year, that this past year, especially with Air, Abigail, Nice Woman's based on a true story, but I have seen a lot of movies this past year, both from Amazon MGM as well as Universal, that, hey, listen, their dedication to the actual experience is still very present. Is it as long as it used to be before COVID? No, but their commitment to really putting these movies out in the big screen for a wide audience, for a theater experience, really shows. And I'm really, really, really glad this movie was given a full theatrical release, because, again, you walked into the screening yesterday, there was a really big line for this movie, and I was like, you would think for a movie like Dune or The Fall Guy or Abigail or have more lines, but I think the power of this movie is that A, the marketing, B, Zendaya, the star power. So I do think that Amazon was capitalizing on this, to, hey, listen, you know what? We know what we have on our hands. This director is really lovable of film buffs and film nerds, minus me, unfortunately. So they knew what movie they had on their hands, and I think giving this movie a theatrical release was definitely the right decision. Because I hope this movie does well in theaters, that that Amazon MGM go, hey, listen, you know what? Movies like this with this kind of budget we believe in, we're going to produce, and there should be a lot more of these movies in the upcoming year or years to follow up. Again, if this was on Amazon Prime day of streaming, it probably would do just as well, if not better. But I think there's something kind of special about this movie being in theaters for a limited time, that, hey, listen, audiences want to see movies like this. It's the lower mid-budget movies. Again, The Beekeeper. Beekeeper, I wasn't a big fan of. Love Jason Statham. Love David Ayer. Didn't work for me personally. I thought it was just okay. That movie made a shit ton of money on a very low, modestly budgeted movie. Same with this movie. I think this movie, if it does well, word of mouth spreads, I think we're looking at a movie that will make a lot of profit for a mid to decent tier budgeted movie. So again, it's definitely refreshing to see studio like MGM, like Amazon, really invest their time and money to giving this movie a full theatrical wide release. So again, if you're intrigued by this movie, I highly, highly, highly recommend seeing this in theaters. It's worth your time. Full price, matinee, discount Tuesday, whatever, senior discount. Definitely see this movie in theaters. So I think you'll just, from the sound mixing, because a lot of the tennis shots felt like gunshots, where I was kind of blinking and flinching, that whoa, the sound making this when the players are hitting the tennis ball with the racket, it felt like gunshots. It felt like kind of just loud, like cannon booms. I'm just like, whoa, why am I flinching at tennis sounds? But that's a lot of power to the mixing, the movie theater experience, the sound in the theater. I think you're for sure doing yourself a disservice for not seeing this movie in theaters. Definitely see this movie in theaters. Support original filmmaking. Again, you have Zendaya, who's a huge star right now with her filmography, Spider-Man, Euphoria, Dune. You got upcomers, Mike Weiss, Josh O'Connor, and again, a director that a lot of film buffs and film nerds love, with Luca Guadagnino. So again, a lot working forward to it, lot working towards it, but definitely see this movie on the big screen. It is worth your time. However, a few problems I have with this movie is that, I'm not a big stickler about how movies are told linearly. It's not literally. It's how linear storytelling. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. Stuff like Deadpool or Memento, or movies that are kind of told out of order. I actually like when they're kind of they kind of take risks and kind of show their movies in a different standpoint, or different kind of storytelling perspective. The way this movie is told, it kind of jumps all over the place in terms of timelines. and when it takes place, it could be a few years from now, it could be like a week before the main event, or a few years, a year after, blah blah blah. It jumps around a lot, where to me I was like, you're kind of jumping around a little too much. I'm not saying the movie should have taken place like, look, listen, 2019, and then we go like kind of like in order, but there was times where the movie kind of jumps all over the place, like a week before the event, a few years, and a few years later, and then a week before, a few days before. It was very kind of messy and very kind of chaotic, where I was like, I think the movie could have done a better job of kind of cleaning it up of the way it was told in a linear storytelling aspect or way. Because again, I think it just jumps around a little too much, where I was like, okay, we were at this place like a week ago, now we're at 10 years ago, now 13 years ago, just like, it was just jumping out of order. And to me, I was like, it just feels distracting, kind of feels like taking away from the overall movie. And I was talking to people after the movie itself, and they didn't seem to be bothered by that. But when I was watching, I was like, I just feel like the movie kind of jumping around a lot just in terms of timelines of where it's going. Like, again, and I criticize this a lot in the Bob Marley biopic, One Love, where it was just like, here, this part, back and forth, past, future, present, this, like that. And I thought that the movie kind of suffered because it was just all over the place. And I felt a slight version of that in this movie, because I'm like, wait, you're cutting back now 10 years, now week before, present day, week before, day of, night of, 13 years ago, 10 years ago, 8 years ago. That to me is a little messy in terms of just like story structure, narrative storytelling, and like how you want to present the story in a certain way. So that definitely bothered me a bit, but not too much to a point where I was like, oh my gosh, like pick a side already. Because of the Bob Marley biopic movie, I was like, okay, just pick a time, stick with it, because you're jumping around too much. It definitely jumped around a lot in this movie, I will admit that, but not as bad as it bothered me in Bob Marley. But I think the movie could have benefited from a little bit cleaner way of timelines and storytelling and certain points of view. I was still intrigued by like where they were going, and I thought the pace in the movie was fantastic. The pace in this movie, it was great. It went. I was never bored. Never was like, okay, let's get on with it, move on. Okay, we've seen this already. I feel kind of dragging on a little bit. Never felt that way whatsoever. But just the way the movie was structured in terms of narrative storytelling and linear storytelling, it bothered me, where I was just like, it's jumping around so much. It should have just picked a certain pattern or certain path, stick with that. But again, going from a month to a week, and then present day, then back 10 years, and back 13 years, and then further back, it was very messy, distracting, where I think the movie could have had benefited a lot from cleaning up from it. But that was my main kind of criticism with the movie overall. And I do think there's times where I didn't really believe Josh O'Connor as the tennis star, where it was just like, he kind of felt like playing kind of this douchey kind of character, which I think he was going for that. But I believe definitely more of Zendaya and Mike Feist as tennis players than I did Josh. But I think Josh had a lot to offer in terms of kind of playing like, not quote the antagonist, quote unquote, but he's playing this kind of like schemy scumbag character that is very believable. But his tennis playing believability was not too believable, to the point where I was like, oh, I can see this. Kind of like this schmucky, kind of like East Coast tennis player. I was like, I can see it to a degree, but not entirely. Where I believe more was Zendaya and Mike Feist. But yeah, guys, like I said, this by far is one of the best original sports movies we got in a long time, and a lot of credit to MGM, Amazon, Zendaya, Luca Guadagnino, MGM, Amazon. It's important movies like this do very well, or modestly well, in the theater, because again, we want to see more movies like this in the theater first, then the streaming. Again, I think the word of mouth goes a long way for films like this. I think Air came out this time last year, both from Amazon, and I think Air did very well opening weekend for its wide release, for its the release from Amazon, but it did gangbusters on Amazon Prime, because again, the word of mouth from people seeing it in theaters, how much they respond to this movie. So if you're a sports fan, drama, thriller fan, Zendaya fan, this movie for sure is up your alley. Go see it in theaters, see it with a crowd. It's worth the full price. Senior discount Tuesday matinee. It's just great seeing movies like this still given the full theatrical release in theaters. And there's one scene that made me kind of freak out, where I was like, ugh, it's in the trailers when there's an injury happening with a certain character, but the way the movie shows it made me kind of almost not like not a dry heave, but I felt like kind of sick. I've had injuries with broken arms, a foot, a foot, an ankle, a hand, where it just kind of struck a little too home to me, where I was like, oh no, I've been there before. I mean, kind of like a visceral reaction. So that's kind of like I was a little squeamish in that part. But seriously, this movie, without a doubt, is worth seeing in theaters. See it opening weekend. I hope we kind of end this streak of kind of like original movies not doing well in theaters. I mean, I think we definitely need to have a movie like this just kick ass in theaters, so we have more movies like this, and to sign to the studios and companies that, hey, listen, movies like this that are original, modestly budgeted, deserve a full theatrical release. So check this movie out this weekend. Wide release, Regal, AMC, Cinemark, Harkins, whatever. It's worth your time. I'm giving this really a solid 8.5 out of 10. I think that the pros outcarry the cons, and the performances from, again, Zendaya. This is, again, like I said, her career best defining performance. I think that she's marking a new territory in terms of an actor. She's legit out of this world great, and she's kind of locking this new kind of potential for her as an actress. Mike Feist, Josh O'Connor are really stars to watch in the making. Look out for them. And again, if you're a Luca Guadagnino fan, this is for sure up your alley. If you're not, if you were impressed with his movies like Bones and All, Call Me by Your Name, or Suspiria, like me, this movie for sure will win you over. I think his direction in this is top tier, remarkable. See this movie's in theaters, guys. See Challengers this weekend. It's worth the price of admission. Alrighty, moving on from films and tennis and Zendaya, we have Amazon Prime's new show, Fallout, based on the very popular video game series. For some context, I really didn't play any of the games growing up. I remember my cousins playing Fallout New Vegas like a long time ago on the PS3 or Xbox 360, or I was like, what is this game? This game is kind of strange. But there's a huge fan base for the series and this game itself. So I remember they announced like a year or two ago that Amazon was doing a Fallout series. And again, I'm a gamer to a degree. I'm not a huge gamer the way I used to be, but I haven't really had a game that like they adapted to a TV show where I was like, yeah, I'm gonna watch that. I wasn't a Last of Us fan, and when Pokemon came out for Pikachu, I was intrigued of Justice Smith and Ryan Reynolds voicing Pikachu, and Catherine Newton, obviously. But I've not been a guy where I was like, oh, I want to see this game as a movie or a show. I just haven't. I think with The Last of Us, they capitalize on a really huge fan base. People love the dystopian, kind of like futuristic storylines. And to me, I thought Last of Us was good, but not great. I thought it was kind of uneven in terms of episodes. I thought, for the most part, it was a very solid, very well made, very great, very well budgeted movie, a series for a video game adaptation. Great people involved with writing, directing, producing, and acting. But I thought that it just kind of felt like uneven throughout. Like there was great episodes, then there was kind of like episode. Then there was great episodes, then again it was kind of just like up and down a little bit. But overall, I thought it was still a very solid series, and I'm looking forward to season 2 because I hope season 2 is based off the other game. So with Fallout, I remember it was announced, people were just like, no. Why are we doing a Fallout game? Why are we doing a game of this? Like, why are we doing a series of this? This game is very beloved. Like, why? There's no need for this. And I remember seeing people like, no, Amazon, what are you doing? You're insane. I'm just like, to me, again, not playing a game, not a fan of the games. I was very intrigued by the discourse of like around this show. Like, wow, people don't seem to react into this show the way I thought it was going to be. So I know it debuted a few weeks ago, and I was hearing good things about that. I was hearing people that are like, nah, not for me. So I was intrigued. I was like, I'm going to watch it eventually. And I was like, okay, I'll watch it. And then over the weekend, Zeta and I were like, we should watch the Fallout. And I was like, you know what? Let's watch Fallout. Let's try it out. Because she was hearing things about it from like TikTok and social media. A lot of her like people that she follows, like critics and reviewers, were like talking about it. And I was hearing kind of just like good things for the most part. And I was like, you know what? Walter Goggins is involved. I'm a huge Walter Goggins fans, from Django, Hateful Eight, Vice Principals, Gemstones, now this. I think the dude's a very, very, very underrated actor. And I was, again, hearing good things about it for the most part. I'll tell you what. First episode goes in, I was intrigued, but I didn't know what to expect. I was like, first episode in, I was sold. I was like, come on, let's watch more. So Zeta and I watched the entire season minus the finale. And I was sold. I was like, wow, because she went to bed, and I was like, no, we gotta finish the finale. How's it gonna end? And I was thinking about it for 2 days. We didn't watch it. We watched it. We didn't watch it the very next day. We watched it like 2 days later, and I was so intrigued. I was in my head. I was like, how's it gonna end? How's it all gonna end? How's it gonna wrap up? Whatever. I think the show really kind of caught me off guard of how good it was. Because again, I went in with like little to no expectations, not playing the games. All I remember is seeing my cousins play Fallout New Vegas years ago. So I remember that, but I was like, not know what to expect. The opening scene got me, sold me. I was like, okay, I'm definitely there. And just the build up, the character development, the character relationships definitely intrigued me, whether it was Lucy or Maximus or Ghoul. The story itself kept me engaged throughout the entire, I think it's 8 episodes. I want to say, let's check right now on IMDb. I want to make sure. I think it was 8. I could be wrong. I think it was 8. Let's see. It is 8. Yeah, all right. Woo, I was right. So 8 episodes. And then I saw like, wait, Christopher Nolan's brother is directing the few episodes and producing it. If you don't know, Jonathan Nolan is responsible for some of his best movies. Jonathan Nolan co-wrote movies like Dark Knight, The Prestige, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar was his idea, Memento was his story. So I was like, no kidding that, like, wow, Chris Nolan's brother directed this, directed the first few episodes and produced it. But then I saw it too, because I remember watching Westworld. This is a shame too. I remember watching Westworld. I was very intrigued by it, but I think HBO and WB pulled it off, and I was like, oh no. So halfway during season 1, they pulled off. I can't watch it anymore. I was like, oh man, that sucks. I was really into it, but I was like, cool. I think the Nolans, Chris, Jonathan, are very talented filmmakers, writers, directors, both in their own ways. I was like, ooh, I'm intrigued more now that you got Chris Nolan's brother is directing this series and producing it. I'm like, hey, say less. I am there. The first few episodes definitely have Jonathan Nolan, the kind of Chris Nolan stamp on it, of like the world building, the character development, the grittiness of it all. But what I really admired about this series is that I was having not played the games, not a fan of the franchise itself, I was definitely intrigued by, like, I kept asking questions of like, what's going to happen next? Who's that person? What's going to happen next? Whatever. And the show does a great job of building suspense, building that kind of anticipation, building that kind of like, ooh, like can this be? Who can that be? Whatever. And I was just like, oh, I'm really into this. And I think the first 8 episodes are great. I don't think the finale definitely landed the way I wanted it to be. I still enjoy the finale for like the technical aspects, the certain storylines, certain like kind of like slow-mo and certain music choices. But I felt like the finale itself was a big buildup of like what's to come. Like, listen, we showed you a lot this season, but wait, there's more. And luckily that Amazon renewed the series for season 2. Because again, if it ended like this and there was no renewal for season 2, I've been like, well, what the hell? Like, how's it gonna end? How are we gonna resolve? How's this gonna resolve? So I think the first 8 are very paced out very well. A lot of build up. There are, to be fair, there are very long episodes for each episode, like an hour 10 each episode. That's a lot to ask for viewers and new fans of the show. Like, hey, listen, I want you to invest an hour 10 each episode, because that's a lot of time, almost a mini movie each episode. But again, it's very cinematic. The way he's shot feels like a movie that was kind of cut up in 8 different pieces. And I think a lot of props to the cinematographer, the DP, the camera work, the directing. Because again, it feels like a movie that was cut up. It's like you're watching kind of breaks in between the movies. It's very cinematic. It's very Jonathan Nolan-esque. But like I said, I do think the finale was a little too heavy on the setup for like, look, what's to come, where I felt like I was watching Dune Part 1 again, of like all this build up, but what's next? And we gotta wait, we don't know when season 2 is gonna come out. So to me, the first 8 were just like rock steady, like twists and turns, a lot of build up, a lot of questions being asked, like who's loyal to who, how's it gonna work out, what's gonna happen after this certain character. Where I thought episode 8 was just a big setup for what's to come next. And again, there's a reveal at the end of this season where I was like, ooh, okay, I'm intrigued by that because of certain reasons of the story, what I'm familiar with. But I just do think that they kind of just rely a little too heavy on the last episode as a big kind of build-up of like, but wait, there's more. turn in next season. And I was like, okay. I don't like when shows or movies kind of just like rely way too much on like, look, this is a big build up. You're gonna love the payoff. Again, we've seen shows, we've seen movies that with the payoff or sequel or next season where like this wasn't as good as the original. I have faith in the team involved, the directing, the writing, people involved that like have faith in this material, the IP, the story, the franchise, that like they know how to deliver a great second season. But I can't help but think that there was just a little too much build up in the last finale where I was like, oh man, if it's more of a cleaner and tighter ending, I probably would have loved this series of the season. But to me, I had too many questions where I was asking. I was like, well, they don't explain this, they don't explain this, they don't explain that, they don't show this, they don't show that. So again, probably more to come in the next season, but I think it would have benefited with a tighter and cleaner kind of like finale overall. Also, not being familiar with the cast too. So obviously, Kyle MacLachlan. I know Walton Goggins, obviously. Ella Purnell, who I kind of knew from a movie called Kick-Ass 2 a long time ago as well. I remember she was definitely good in Army of the Dead as Batista's daughter. And I was I thought her performance, her chemistry, dynamic between Batista was very believable. I loved the whole daughter-father relationship. That for sure worked. I did not know Aaron Moten at all, and I was definitely intrigued by his performance. Again, seeing the IMDb, he was in a movie called Father Stew that I saw as well as Top 5, and I was like, man, I don't remember him, but like he has a lot of range in this, where he's playing this kind of just like really broken kind of soldier, Kyle Reese kind of S character from Terminator, where like he has a lot of layers. You're like, where does he stand? Where is he going? Where is his allegiance going to? Where is like, what is his kind of just like, what is his arc? And I thought his arc in this was very intriguing because you can see the change of him from start to finish, as well as Ella Purnell's character Lucy, where you're like, you can see the change and dynamic between the characters of like how they start and where they end. And again, even though I criticized the ending, I thought the ending definitely gave them both of like, oh shit, what will happen next to these characters? Because you've seen them on his 8-episode arc journey of like where we saw them from, where they ended at, and I really thought they did a good job of kind of expanding their just like their beliefs, their perspective, and their viewpoints, whatever. So I thought they had great chemistry too. I thought when they were on screen together during their journey, like you believe them as friends, survivors, romantic interest, and I think it's a lot to the directing and the writing that they picked, and the casting too, that they picked two people that can really carry this show. And I'm glad they didn't cast Timothy Chalamet. I'm glad they didn't cast Michael B. Jordan. That like they casted kind of relatively unknowns for the most part, because it made it more believable. Of like, hey, listen, I don't know these people. I'm not watching XYZ actor do this. I'm not watching Michael B. Jordan kind of play this like brotherhood soldier actor. I'm not seeing an actress. I'm not seeing Florence Pugh play this character. That like, again, both great actors in their own, but the fact that these two actors are not like relatively well known, it adds a lot to the story, and kind of you're like, you can relate to these characters of like, hey, listen, I can see this happening. I can root for them. I can like see myself. I can relate to these characters. So a lot of props to the casting and just the writing of these characters themselves. Like I said too, Walton Goggins, he's playing this really interesting kind of like Ghost Rider-esque character. He's a lot of layers. I love the flashbacks with his story and where he was then and where he is now. Has a lot of heart and emotion to the story overall, but I do think they could have explained a little bit more with his character at the end. I think the ending was kind of just like a little cut for time, and I really do hope they explore more of his character in the next season, because there's a lot of unanswered questions where I was like, I kind of want them to explain this because I'm intrigued by what he said here. So I hope they definitely explore, and hope they answer a lot of questions I had remaining for this season. But I definitely think not playing the game, not being familiar with the franchise, going in, I was like, hope this is good. This could be one and done where I check out that first episode. I was hooked right away. I was intrigued by it. It was very engaging. It was very intriguing. I thought it had a really good spectacle for a TV series. So I definitely recommend this show to anyone if you're intrigued by post-apocalyptic stuff, good character-driven stories, great kind of just like spectacle-esque post-apocalyptic kind of just like wasteland. To me, it reminded me a lot of watching like a Mad Max mixed with The Last of Us kind of vibe where I was like, ooh, I can see Mad Max in here. I kind of see Last of Us in here, the surviving stories. So I would definitely recommend this show to anyone too. Yes, it is long. I will say too that I do think the episodes are a bit long, where each of them are like an hour 10, like an hour 10 episodes. And that's kind of long for the average consumer, average kind of like just typical binger or typical TV fan. But if you stick with it, I think it's a very good show. I think it adds a lot, great arc, and I'm definitely intrigued for season 2. I hope they kind of follow through and don't disappoint. And I've seen a lot of shows where I was like, oh, season 2, here we are, let's go. And I was like, wow, this sucked or let me down. So I have faith. I hope Jonathan Nolan is back involved with season 2. I thought his mark was all over it. I think his kind of just like creative outpouring and inputs was very intriguing. And also too, I love the use of music in this. The music in this is like all like kind of like Nat King Cole and like really 60s and 50s music, but it works very well with the show itself. Certain battle scenes, certain kind of just like really kind of heavy moments. The music score and soundtrack in this really is remarkable, and it really just works incredibly well throughout the entire 8-episode first season. But yeah, I cannot wait for season 2. I think if they're smart, Amazon and MGM will take their time kind of developing, kind of planning out this new season. If they go, hey, guess what? Season 2 coming out end of the year, early January, I'd be like, you rushed this very well. I do think kind of like how The Last of Us season 2 is taking place right now, whereas like there's a lot of downtime between season 1 and season 2 of production development for those shows. I think with this show, Fallout, I would do the same. Take your time. There's no rush. If you really want to bring your audiences back, or even build on your audience too, take your time with the season. So if there's 2 years in between season 1 and season 2 of Fallout, I'd be bummed. But hey, listen, if you know what you're doing, you're writing a very well, interesting, really intriguing, very well character-written story, by all means, take your time. But I think it has to be on par, if not better, than season 1. I think you have a lot. I think you kind of just like have big shoes to fill now, even with people who are fans of the game and what they kind of led to at the end of this season. Don't disappoint us. But I'm very intrigued for what comes next, and definitely sold me right away in the first episode. So yeah, guys, that is my review roundup episode this week. Hope you enjoyed my rambling and kind of just my take on this move on Challengers as well as Fallout. Both Amazon, MGM, related shows that I just kind of realized for the first time. But definitely both this movie, both the show is definitely worth your time. Again, please support original filmmaking in the theaters like this movie. It's important for us, important for the theater experience, for the movie theaters itself, that we get more of these original mid to decent tier budgeted movies. But thank you guys so much for tuning in this week's episode. Like I said, we'll be back next week with a full episode of our Fall Guy review, summer 2024 movie preview season, and of course our coverage and thoughts on the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer. And as always, guys, we will see you at the movies. Take care.